Evening, everyone. Some of you have been coming along to all of these Thursday evening sessions. Others of you probably coming along for the first time or come for part of this series. So we've been trying to structure these so that they're applicable both for people just coming to an individual session or as a whole series. And I like to preface all of these evenings by saying that if I'm presuming too much or I'm using too much sort of Buddhist jargon and I'm losing people, or it's something that I'm saying seems to depend on something else that's gone before that you've missed, you sort of opening the book at chapter 4, then please feel free to kind of ask and have things clarified, because it's all for you, So if you're being mystified or lost in the verbiage, then please speak up and let us know, and we can help to try and clarify things as much as possible. So the theme for this evening. Firstly, has everyone got enough space to sit? Everyone well enough situated? Okay. So the theme for this evening is giving and receiving heart. And so what I'd like to do, as with all these evenings, I'll introduce the theme for about 20-25 minutes or so, and then we'll have a guided meditation, and then open things up for some discussion and questions and so forth. Essentially, this theme is a very significant one in the realm of Buddhist meditation, and that particularly in the southern Buddhist countries, where the Theravada tradition is carried on. That's the Theravada means the way of the elders, one of the oldest schools of Buddhism. So in the countries of Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, this area of the world, has been sustained along with the other elements of meditation practice, of concentration and insight that we've talked about in the first few meetings to some extent. The quality of loving kindness or metta in Buddhist practice is also very heavily emphasized, very much stressed. So that I thought I'd talk a little bit about this quality of loving kindness this evening, and to explore one or two methods of developing it by the use of meditation. Loving kindness, the word metta literally means something. There's not really an English word that quite matches it. So that some people will translate it as loving friendliness or universal kindness, these different ways. Can our friend get in the door? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. And one of the ways that the Buddha characterized this was to take the example of the love that a mother has for her only child, and to say, if one looks at that kind of love, that kind of unquestioning, unconditional affection, then the aim of metta practice, loving kindness practice, and this element is to cultivate that, to develop that, so that one could have that same kind of unquestioning benevolence, unquestioning, unconditional kindness to all other beings, regardless of their station, their qualities, whether they are humans or animals, whether they are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, whatever nature, to develop this kind of caring and friendliness towards all beings. Now one of the things that is very characteristic about this quality is that there's a particular patterns of meditation that we can do, and so later this evening we'll probably use this in a guided meditation, whereby you begin by bringing forth, like imagining someone or thinking of someone that you love very dearly. You have an automatic sense of affection and kindness, a warmth towards, maybe to your child or to your partner or to your pet. Being English is often we relate to pets a lot more easily than we do to humans sometimes. But whatever it might be, where there's an instinctual, complete and unequivocal sense of affection and kindness. So by bringing that kind of image to mind, then arousing that quality, feeling that quality of kindness, and then by making that fully conscious, then slowly extending that. And there's a couple of different ways that one can do this. Firstly, in a geographical way. So one might imagine, first of all, beginning by spreading loving kindness towards yourself. Oftentimes in the sort of from the Judeo-Christian inheritance that we've most of us have arrived in this world bearing, the number one is last on the affection list. That we would think of loving ourselves as being some kind of gross indulgence, or some kind of inflated quality, or something that's sort of unseemly or definitely unspiritual, liking ourselves. But in Buddhist practice, the Buddha pointed out that if we can't have loving kindness towards ourselves, towards this person, then how can we possibly have any kind of real loving kindness towards any other being? So that in all respects, in all different styles of practice of loving kindness meditation, it always begins with having kindness towards ourselves. And one way that it's sometimes easier to relate, rather than trying to have loving kindness or benevolence towards our personality, which might be a little bit tricky. All of us have certain traits we'd rather do without, or we kind of wish we could edit out. We can at least have loving kindness towards our own body. That we can have that kind of friendliness and affection towards this companion in life that we have, our own sort of a never departing pet. And just like a pet, you know, when the master treats the pet with affection, then of course, you know, the pet responds unless it's a particularly sort of kind of superior cat that looks with disdain upon all humans. But let's just say it's a dog for the time being. That if you bestow affection on the dog, then of course the dog responds with great glee and is incredibly happy because, you know, mother is paying attention, and there's this kind of joyful, vigorous and friendly response. So similarly, when we fill the body with a quality of attention and kindness, then we also can find that the body actually responds. We find ourselves kind of brightening up, and the body itself seems to sort of chirp up a bit and have a little bit more energy and vitality, more kind of a quality of balance and vigor. So by beginning by filling our own being with this quality of kindness, then we can spread it out, as I said, geographically. So then, first of all, to the other people in the room that we're sharing, and then from that room, then into the area, other beings in the building, and then then slowly spreading out through the area of the town, and then the district, the county, the state, then all over the country. And it depends how graphic one's imagination can be, but spreading out throughout the country, you can just sort of witness this sort of like a warm golden light slowly spreading across the face of the nation, and then north and south in all directions, and slowly and gently kind of wrapping the entire globe, and everywhere it reaches, it touches the lives of all of the creatures, other beings, the plants and animals, the insects, the birds, the fishes, small and great, and all of the human beings. Obviously, those who are in a good situation, a painful situation, those who are beautiful, those who are ugly, those who are sick, those who are just born, those who are just dying. The imagination can play with all kinds of images, and one can visualize this quality of kindness wrapping the entire planet, embracing the entire planet, and then even beyond that, spreading out from just this one little blue ball floating in this particular patch of the cosmos to spread out through the universe. This is one methodology one can use. Another is to, rather than going through geography, going through the different categories of beings. So first of all, we start with having begun with ourselves, then we go to the beings that we love, that are very dear to us, and then those to whom we are, who we know that we're indifferent to, and then those that are close to us, with whom we have conflict, or people who hate us, or we have feelings of aversion or negativity towards. And then we can spread through the rest of the human realm out to people we don't know. Again, those who we admire, those who we're indifferent to, those that we feel threatened by or that we feel aversion towards. And again, kind of bringing in, as we go along, all the different categories, the attractive, the neutral, and the unattractive. And then after we've done all the humans, it depends how much of a sort of orderly mind you have. You can kind of get, if you're a Virgo, like I am, then we're stricken with a list-making mind. So we like to have all our categories neatly stacked up and have everything done in the right order. So if you have that kind of ailment or disposition, then you can do it that way. Or you can just be very sort of free-form and sculpted as you choose. But basically, working through the different categories of beings, you might have a lot of fun imagining all the kind of the many-footed creatures, or the little tiny microscopic bugs, or the plants and the rocks and the streams, and the great beings, the elephants and whales, the tiny beings, the little critters in all dimensions. Beings in other realms, like beings in the kind of invisible realms of, say, the ghosts, or the angelic beings, or the demonic beings in other realms of the cosmos. However we want to do it, just we can create a different patterns of spreading from this heart, the center of this being, like a generator of this quality of beautiful sentiment and intention, sending forth that noble aspiration to meet every being with a quality of kindness and friendliness. So this is, in a way, what we term as giving heart. But it's one of the things about loving kindness that is kind of striking is numerous times when I've been leading retreats, and I might have mentioned this earlier on in one of the classes, I forget what I've said to whom, when. So if I'm repeating myself, just ignore what I said before. So one of the most commonly observed effects is sometimes to lead a guided meditation of this kind on loving kindness, and then during a meditation retreat, either a day long or a weekend or a 10-day retreat, something like that. And then when you're chatting with people or sitting with someone in an interview, it's not uncommon for someone to say, well, I was doing fine, my meditation was going really well until we did that loving kindness meditation. And I just felt this enormous irritation. I found it so annoying that I was having to kind of spread this affection over the world, when all I felt was kind of the inner Elmer Fudd, pesky rabbit, that kind of the grouch, the inner Scrooge that just doesn't want to be bothered. Is kind of utterly nauseated by sugaring everything over. The kind of inner cynic sometimes gets roused as soon as we say, be nice to everyone. Then suddenly that bar humbug, I don't want to be nice, kind of arise up. It will surprise us, like, wow, I didn't know I was so grumpy. Or, boy, that hit a sore spot. What happened there? So sometimes we can misunderstand or misinterpret what we mean by loving kindness, and so it's not everyone who has that kind of reaction, but it does come. And I think what it's usually due to is when we feel like we're trying to force ourselves to like everything, that we're trying to see the world through a sort of Walt Disney-esque pair of glasses, that, wouldn't it be nice if everything was nice mentality that, starts the stomach churning immediately. Like it's a kind of thinking pink. Just to say that, you start to feel kind of, ugh. It's like when you're 3 years old, you think you can just eat cotton candy from one end of the day to the other and you'd be happy. But it doesn't work that way. And so that something in our heart can recoil from that. So it's very important to understand that when we talk about loving kindness, we're not trying to make ourselves like everything. And if there's one thing that's most significant about loving kindness, it's really this point, because we're not trying to have a state of mind where we are trying to pretend that the bitter is sweet, or that that cruelty is beautiful, or that our anger is a wonderful thing. Certainly these elements of the world are part of nature. Violence is part of nature. Selfishness is part of nature. Jealousy is part of nature. These certainly exist as elements of the natural world. So having loving kindness towards other beings, towards those who are harmful and destructive, as well as those who are kind of cuddly and pure-hearted, it doesn't mean to say that we're approving of their actions, or that we're pretending that we like that. What we're doing is we're saying, this is the way it is right now. So in a way, this is the receiving heart. It's the heart which is accepting the way things are. So, and accepting doesn't mean approving. One of the main teachings that the Buddha gave on loving kindness was to say, if you were kidnapped by bandits and they were sawing your arms and legs off with a two-handled saw, see, this is the way the Buddha gets your attention. It's either with lists or with very graphic images. So this is how we remember things most easily. Okay, here we are, we've been kidnapped by bandits, and they're sawing our arms and legs off with a two-handled saw. He says, anyone who gave rise to a thought of hatred towards those people on that account would not be practicing my teaching. Right, this is the Olympics, right? So that sets the bar pretty high. But it certainly gets our attention, doesn't it? Now, it doesn't mean to say that you have to like it. I'd not say, oh, I'm terribly sorry that my sinews are so tough. If I'd only known, I wouldn't have eaten so much protein, so it wouldn't be so much work for you to be chopping me up like this. No, it's not that. It's that seeing that gesture in the heart which makes somebody other, that makes someone evil, or that they are sort of intrinsically and absolutely bad or wrong. It's like saying any movement of the heart that makes that gesture is intrinsically out of accord with reality. So to find loving kindness in this way, establish loving kindness, it means that certainly it's painful and it's shocking and unwanted, but here it is, it's happening. And so that one is, in a way, able to find that space in the heart where we don't dwell in aversion, we don't dwell in negativity towards other beings. And this is doable. This is certainly something that we can do. The Buddha used that particularly graphic example to say, because in many senses we think, well, just a little bit of hatred, that seems reasonable, it seems totally justified. But he's saying, no, as soon as we make someone other, as soon as we discriminate and makes another being into something intrinsically other, apart, separate, wrong, then we have to, at that moment, have lost the reality, which I find a very powerful and wonderful teaching. So what this comes down to in terms of meditation practice, what I find when teaching loving-kindness meditation is, rather than thinking of it as a special kind of technique that one does sort of alongside, say, concentration practice or insight practice that we've been talking about in these first few weeks, that it's far more important to really establish that quality of real kindness, a real acceptance, as the basis of all meditation. Because you might think, I'm a kind of nice person, I'm kind, I don't have any sort of problems with violence or anger, I'm a very mild, gentle person. But then when we come to start trying to practice meditation, and then unwanted thoughts and feelings start wading in, then we can find ourselves extraordinarily violent, like just trying to make the thinking mind shut up and go away, and an emotion comes up, say, get out of here, I'm meditating, I'm trying to be peaceful. And we have this whole fight on our hands where we are trying to wipe out thought, wipe out feeling, wipe out anger, wipe out distraction, so then I can be peaceful. I'm developing my spiritual life. And so, the very method whereby we're trying to establish peace is completely unpeaceful. One of the important qualities of Buddhist practice is that the means and the end are completely unified. Like, this is absolutely not the case that the means justifies the ends. The means is the end, in terms of the Buddhist understanding. So if we use harsh and aggressive means to control the mind, to wipe out distraction, to force the mind not to feel fear or aversion or desire, then that fierce, aggressive, discordant attitude will be there with the result. It has to be. Whereas if we use a kind of gentle, peaceful, and harmonious means, then naturally the result has to mirror those same qualities. So this doesn't mean just sort of sitting back and saying, everything is fine. Ajahn Amaro said, be kind to everything, okay. Here comes the chattering mind, fine. Being distracted for the entire half hour, okay, that's fine. I'm completely lost, gone off to India, Peru, and Paris, a couple of times, but that's fine. Or I've been wallowing in some kind of resentful mood, or I've been filled with kind of self-critical gnashings. That's fine. It's not a matter of just letting the mind do whatever it wants. What this means by loving kindness is rather like a mother trains a child, or we train an animal, is that you don't just let that child do what it wants. It's like you say, well, Ajahn Amaro says, you have to love everything, accept everything. So when the 3-year-old says, can I drive, Mommy? You say, no, honey. Or you stop at the side of the road and you take the ignition key out and you say, okay, off you go, now you can drive. But you don't hand the wheel to the 3-year-old on the freeway, right? So what we do is we are establishing that basis of kindness in terms of, first of all, recognizing everything belongs. That the distracted thought belongs, the focus on the breath belongs, the wave of anger belongs, the wave of fear, the restless sensations, the fantasies about this and that and the other, they all belong, along with the benevolent and pure thoughts. So we establish that quality of absolute belonging. Everything has its place in nature. So there's a basis of loving kindness, of wholehearted acceptance. And then, on that basis of wholehearted acceptance, then we bring in discriminative wisdom. And what this means is to say, okay, well, I can see a value in training my mind to focus. Rather, as you can see, well, I can see a value in training my 3-year-old how to handle a spoon, how to feed themselves. I can see a value in training my child how to use the toilet, the bathroom. I can see a value in teaching my animal, to pee outside rather than inside. So we don't look upon those discriminations as some kind of big spiritual problem. It's like it's practical necessity. So, similarly, we see there's a value in training the mind to focus. There's a value in training the mind to develop awareness. But that's not by starting a war against thought or hating our emotions. So an example I often like to use, it's rather like, here we are in Ukiah. So if I want to go to Redwood Valley, say at the end of the evening, then when Larry pulls out onto the road, and there we are on the kind of slip road for the freeway, we want to go north, we don't want to go south. So we take the ramp that heads north. It doesn't mean to say that south is bad and wrong and evil. It's not saying that this thought or this emotion or this idea is evil. It's just we don't want to go that way. We want to go towards the breath rather than towards plans for next week's holiday. That's all. So that we discriminate, but it's a discrimination just made on a basis of practicality, of simplicity, not on get out of here, you don't belong, or like breath, back to the breath. As some kind of draconian regime that we're employing, trying to force the mind to behave. So this way, we're using direction, we're applying intention and effort, we're directing our mind, but there's that wholehearted affection and benevolence that it's based upon. It's a cooperation, it's a cooperative effort with our nature, not starting a struggle against it. So before we have the guided meditation period, I said a lot of things there, so I just want to just check in and see if that was what I was saying was clear enough, or if people have any particular questions before we begin. Did that make sense or not? Yeah.
Are you saying that the problem with making something other is that we're refusing to see it, we're sort of closing it out or banishing it, and therefore we're distancing ourselves from what's real? Is that?
Yeah, in that gesture we're saying something is intrinsically and absolutely wrong with the universe right now. There's this element of life which doesn't belong, which should not be. And like my own teacher would say, if it shouldn't be this way, it wouldn't be this way. He was very good at these kind of one-liners. If it shouldn't be this way, it wouldn't be this way, which sounds very kind of depressing or sort of a kind of fatalistic. But it's not really. It's extraordinarily realistic. It's like saying, whether we like it or not, it's like this. That's like, how many of us have had that feeling, if only I was somebody different? If only I wasn't me, or just a little bit different, then things would be really much better, I'm sure, if I was just a little bit different. But we are what we are. So it's that kind of ultimate realism of seeing that, yeah, this is painful, or this is unjust, or this is ugly, but this is the fact of nature. So always being ready to start from that point. Because if we don't start from that point, it's rather like saying, that kind of old joke of when someone stops in their car and asks for directions, they kind of talk to a passerby, and the passerby says, "Oh, well, I wouldn't. You can't get to there from here. Or if you want to get to Redwood Valley, you shouldn't be starting from here. You should start from Fort Bragg." But we have to start from where we are.
Kenneth?
Yeah.
Are you saying then that our only way to be in touch with reality is through the heart? Is that...
Basically. That's very well put. Yeah. That's our contact point with the fundamental reality of things. Okay, so if people want to stretch your legs for a minute, and then we'll have the first sitting period.
meditation has to be in a lotus position.
Why not? Once the body is trained to sit, this is in the lotus posture, then it's actually the most comfortable position to sit in. Actually, but the body is very well balanced, and you have like it supports the the flow of energy in the body. It helps the mind to be as bright as possible.
Want to hear. There's a reason for it.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's not just sort of some kind of perverse habit. Yeah. No, it's like the body is in its most sort of stable and a kind of comfortable position. I mean, it takes a long time to train it to do that, but once the joints are loosened up, then it's the most balanced and energetic. Kind of easeful posture. Okay. So once again, beginning by taking note of how you feel, what our mood is right now, before we try to do anything with the body or the mind, just to check in, see how we feel, physically, mentally. What's the body like? What's the mood like? There's no right starting place, whether we're happy or unhappy, tired, energetic, hot, cold. Whatever it is, this is where we start from. So just to begin by acknowledging, appreciating just that much. Attention into the body, noticing how the body feels. Now focusing for a moment just on the spine, letting the body grow upwards, reaching, allowing the spine to lengthen, to stretch a little, lending this quality of attentiveness, alertness. When you find the spine is settled into a good, strong, upright form, just let the rest of the body relax around that. taking a moment to sweep the attention from the top of the head all the way through the body, right down to our feet, our fingertips. Wherever you find any kind of tension, just let the body relax there. Fully allowing ourselves to soften, to settle, to be at ease with this moment. And drawing the attention to the heart center, the center of the chest. Just feel the rhythm of the breath right there. Not trying to change the breath or do anything with it. Just focusing the attention right here at our very heart. Feeling the body breathing, following its own rhythm. In whatever way we can or wish to, bring to mind some person or some animal, some being that we have complete and unconditional affection for, or whatever the greatest degree of warmth and friendliness. Some person that's alive or passed away, whatever way, shape or form it manifests for us. Even if it's a love for some divine being, whatever it might be. Just bringing that forth, holding that being in our heart. Feeling that quality of unreserved love and kindness, warmth, acceptance of that person, that being. Not writing any stories, just very, very simply bringing that quality of their presence to mind, holding it in the heart, and feeling that warmth, that openness that arises with that. We can take this image, this quality, like the spark that kindles our heart, like the flame that ignites the candle, the spark that ignites this quality of metta, benevolence within our heart. So the fire having been lit, its light generated here within our heart. Then with each in-breath, just to imagine, to visualize as if we're breathing in the air of this room, breathing in the energy of this present moment, breathing in the situation, the pattern of this present moment, breathing it all in, the energy of the present, breathing it into the heart on the in-breath, and transforming all the energy of the present moment, the sounds we hear, the feelings, the thoughts, the air, as if the heart transforms all of that energy into this light of loving kindness. And then as we breathe out, imagine that light gathering, spreading at our heart, reaching forth into our own body. As if our heart were like a lamp or beacon, a light source, taking in the fuel of each moment, transforming it, and slowly spreading through the body, reaching from the heart, spreading through the chest, slowly filtering through us. With each out-breath, spreading the light further and further through the body. Filling the body with this quality of friendliness, kindness towards our own physical being, our organs, our bones, our blood, our muscles, our joints. With each out-breath, slowly inching through the body, out to the limits of our skin. Like a warm, gentle, golden light, filling the whole frame of our body. Slowly and gently soaking into every corner, right to our fingertips, our toes, our bones, our bowels. Each in-breath, sustaining this quality of taking in the energy of this moment, transforming it in the heart, and from the heart breathing it forth, spreading it forth, till the body is swelling, filled, brimming with this gentle, bright energy of kindness, fully accepting the body as it is, with all its strengths and weaknesses, powers and ailments, loving it just the way it is, accepting it just the way it is. And as the body gets so filled with this, the presence of this energy, filled with this bright benevolence, slowly that light starts to filter through our skin, spreading around us. So our whole body becomes a beacon, a light source. The heart breathing in the energy of this moment, breathing out, pouring forth the same quality of affection, spreading out, radiating from our heart throughout this whole room, reaching into each other, spreading through each other, filling all of the space of this chamber, passing through all the bodies and beings of all of us gathered here, the fabric of the room, filling this whole space with a kindly attitude, well-wishing. With each out-breath, spreading it further, stronger, gently pouring forth, filling this whole space. spreading beyond the bounds of this room, reaching out, spreading forth from this building, reaching out through the town around us, through the trees and streets, the air, through the cars, the buildings, without discrimination, through the houses of our friends, through the courthouse, the Walmart, the stores, the shops, the empty spaces. The county offices, the local jail, the schools and playing fields, passing through people, dogs, cats, and cockroaches, all the beings of this area, feeling, imagining this light spreading, surrounding, permeating the whole space of this town, passing through every wall, every creature, every space, gently spreading forth, reaching forth, generated by this very heart of ours, steadily, incessantly, breathing in the energy of this moment, transforming it into this living light, this kindly well-wishing, reaching forth, filling this whole area of Ukiah, the whole limits of the town. Then with each breath, our range getting stronger, reaching forth, spreading through the whole area outside of the town, reaching across the county, across the hills, through the trees, the forests, across the rivers, the creeks, the springs, through the dens of foxes and bears, under the ground, through the rocks and subterranean waters, through the air, encompassing, filling the birds, the insects, the butterflies, the creatures of the water, all the people of the hills, the valleys, woven in and out of the whole county, across the vineyards, the pear orchards, wild forests, the lakes, the roads, spreading forth to the ocean, the crashing waves on the shore, out to the lakes, the forests of the north, and the vineyards and farms of the south. Each breath getting larger, the power of the heart growing greater, spreading this light indiscriminately, incessantly, pouring it forth. Out beyond this county, reaching across the ocean, under the waters, permeating all the sea creatures, the fishes, the whales, turtles, jellyfish, the tiny microscopic plankton, the creatures of the shore and the rock pools, south to the Bay Area. Thousands of acres of buildings and blacktop, teeming people, all states of being, the prisoners of San Quentin, the rich of Pacific Heights, across through all the regions of California, and down to the south, across to the desert, sweeping forth in all directions, reaching, spreading with each breath. The fertile places, the dry places, the cold, the hot, the wet, high and low, reaching through every corner. Our heart, the generator of this great light, inexhaustible, reaching across the whole country, across the ocean, north and south, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, down to the south in Mexico, Baja, across the ocean, reaching out, wrapping, reaching, spreading the cold waters of the north to Canada, to Hawaii, down to the south. It's visualizing the whole earth slowly being embraced, wrapped, encompassed, edging around the whole planet like our fingers gently, slowly wrapping the whole globe, embracing the whole globe. From this very heart, this infinitely resourceful, inexhaustible heart, this gentle light, reaching, enfolding, embracing the whole planet, this beautiful green and blue jewel, all the beings of the planet, those at war, those at peace, the saintly, the profane, the violent, the victims, high and low in all states of being, without discrimination, permeating the fabric, the hearts, the nature of all beings, all the land and waters, the air, filling this whole planet, wrapping the whole planet, embraced in this field of kindness. And spreading forth from this spot out into space, beyond the earth, through the solar system, Venus, Mars, Mercury, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, to the sun, the moon, spreading out, racing, reaching without limit, like light itself, incalculably fast, filling the whole of space, this galaxy, the spaces between the galaxies, filling all of space without discrimination in all directions, up and down, all around us, without obstruction. The entirety of space, the universe, filled with the presence of this infinite kindness, unconditional well-wishing, acceptance. This is the way life is. This is the way the universe is. And as we race and reach to the very edges of the universe, we find a limit, a boundary. And right at the edges of the universe, we find that it's the shape of our own body. Our shoulders, our legs, the crown of the head. If the whole universe is encased within this one frame, this being. The body of the universe filled with this infinite kindness, acceptance. Is resting with that feeling. Allowing the heart to rest in this. So please give your legs a little stretch if you need to. Please feel free to bring up any kind of questions or doubts or comments. This is a kind of open time for discussion and so forth. Don't be shy. If anything is sort of unclear or whatever, please, I'll be happy to help out whatever way I can.
I can understand the notion of acceptance without condoning. But what about acceptance and affecting change, and affecting change in the world? How does acceptance and that kind of conflict work?
Well, it's like Suzuki Roshi used to say, everything is absolutely perfect exactly as it is, but there's always room for improvement. So, that's, in a way, that's what we're doing is say, attuning the heart to the way things are, but then part of the way things are is our own aspect, our own attributes of wisdom, of sensitivity to time and place, our own sensitivity to what can be done to make life more peaceful, more beneficial, more safe, and free from harm for ourselves and for other beings. So it's not a kind of passivity. That acceptance is by no means just as I was trying to communicate, kind of just sitting back and letting everything happen. Like I was using the examples of training a child or training an animal. You don't just let the world do its thing, but our actions and our intentions and our capacity to alter the world is part of the way the world is. But it's a point of coming at that action from a place of attunement to reality, not from some reactive opinion, some kind of habit, some motivation guided by fear or irritation or a kind of distorted view of things. So then the action, if we take action from that kind of basis, then we can be speaking out for something, we can be opposing others quite vigorously, but we're not opposing them because we hate them or because we're looking at them as intrinsically other. It's because, that for the benefit of all beings, this particular thing needs to be obstructed. It's just like if your kid is running out into the street chasing after a ball, you grab the child by the shirt, even if that's going to hurt the kid, because you see there's a truck coming, and if you don't yank the kid back, then the child's going to die. You don't just stand on the pavement, on the sidewalk, and say, well, this is the way things are, bye-bye, Johnny. That's utter stupidity, right? So that sometimes it's necessary to take action which is other people are very unhappy about. But you're not doing it to make them unhappy, you're doing it out of your own attunement to what is for the greater good. And that's always a tricky area. I'm doing this for your own good. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry?
So I'll have to give it some thought.
Yeah, do, please. Yeah, there's another question there. If you could speak up a little bit so that everyone can hear.
I was wondering about, part of, I'm having trouble with this, with motherly love is you also feel the pain. How do you deal with that?
The pain of the
suffering.
Mm.
And it just gets worse as you go out
as you go out
into the world. The other creatures that are dying. How do you deal with it?
Well, the sense of caring is always balanced by the qualities of wisdom. Like a mother needs to attach to her child, right? And if a mother doesn't attach to her child, the child's in deep trouble. But then, if a mother becomes possessive of the child, then there's even worse trouble. So that the kind of skill that Buddhist teachings and the meditation is aimed at cultivating in this respect is how can we care completely, but without that kind of possessive edge, where we're caught up in that. So that, like, if you have a child and the child is experiencing great suffering or is sick, then we feel a sense of grief, or we feel a kind of pain because of the child's difficulty. So we're not trying to suppress that and to pretend that everything's okay. in that respect about we're glad this is happening. But we can empathize if we're not sort of caught up in that possessiveness or identified with that feeling. We can feel the pain, we can empathize with the pain of another being, but without becoming entangled in that. It's like English doesn't really quite have a word for that, because when we use a word like compassion, which I was aiming to speak a little bit about next week, the word compassion it literally means suffering with. That's what it comes from. Compassio, the Latin, means to suffer with. So the Buddhist sense of compassion is not quite the same. So that we are able to empathize with the suffering of another being, but from the Buddhist point of view, to truly have compassion for another being is not a state of suffering. Do you see what I mean? So that we can in a way empathize with the pain another being is feeling without being entangled in it in the same way. And actually that's in a way the greatest gift that we can give to another being when they're in a painful state is that complete empathy, but without being pulled into their own their own vortex or kind of sucked into the kind of lostness that a being might be experiencing. So it's kind of tricky to talk about because the English language doesn't really have a word that quite describes that. But this is the quality that we're aiming at. So it's not like a kind of cold distancing. There's a total empathy, but there's no confusion about it. So say, for example, we can experience grief, like if we lose someone that we love, or we've done something, or something has happened that is extremely painful. I mean, I've had the experience where I've had like tears running down my face with a feeling of immense grief for some incredibly stupid thing that I'd done that had caused a huge amount of pain and difficulty to others. Actually, it was about starting the monastery here in California, so incidentally, which I can kind of look at cheerfully from a distance. But at the time, it was very, very difficult, and I'd kind of completely blown it. I'd missed my shot completely, and so it was like I'd screwed up royally, and everyone was angry with me, and I'd really made a mess of things. And I was sitting there, just kind of slumped against the wall, and there's tears pouring down my face, and this extraordinarily painful feeling of grief and sadness. And yet it was completely peaceful. And as soon as my mind started to kind of think about it, or start to make a sort of story, or like go into, oh, poor me, or if only, then the tears would stop. And then as soon as I let go of trying to verbalize it, explain it, write a commentary about it, then, and just let go and just let the feeling be there, the feeling was actually stronger, but it was also like held within this embrace of peace and a real mindfulness. And this was a very strange and powerful experience for me, because the thinking about it actually made it less painful, but it was also kind of divorced from the reality. So in a way, I mean, that was a very extreme situation, but in a way, being able to just allow ourselves to feel the pain of a situation, but without confusion, is in a way the aim, so that we're not cutting ourselves off from the experience, but we're not swept up by it. And that when we feel like as a parent or just in relating to the other beings of the world, or the kind of stress of the world situation on the human level right now in so many places around the planet, in the Middle East and in India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, in South America, I mean, so many places that the terrible things are happening, Colombia and Argentina and all over. That if we kind of have kindness without wisdom, or compassion without wisdom, then we get swept up and carried away with that. If that's balanced with wisdom, then we can empathize with other beings and their pain, but that balance is sustained. Is that helpful? I mean, if there's more to that, please. Yeah, I mean, it's a lifetime's occupation, I think, because in a way we don't know that area of our own being. We're either sort of cold and shut off, or sort of swept away and carried around by the floods of feeling. And we don't know that kind of the middle way. That middle ground is sort of unknown to us. So it takes practice, like a lot of just teasing that out. So at first it's just kind of, it's gone. And it's literally like that, a second here, a couple of seconds there, but our heart actually knows that space. In our heart of hearts, we know that place. So in a way, it's like uncovering that and learning to trust, just being in that place. Like, I get it. It's like learning to ride a bicycle when you're a kid. It's like, for a second you can do it on the two wheels, and then over you go. Then slowly it becomes like, I know this space. You kind of learn how to balance. I get it. You pedal and you stay upright, right? And then you slowly find that, and then you can kind of go to that and live from that space more and more easily. Yeah, you had a question. If you can speak up.
Can you say how that is related to attachment?
Well, if we pick something up, like I can say, I'm attached to this bell striker, I'm holding it, so that we pick something up. So attaching is not the problem. If I then say, this is mine, then nothing, it's almost indistinguishable. People at the back probably can't see, but my grip has changed, and my hand is vibrating. There's tension in my arm. So that there's possessiveness, there's clinging, to use the sort of Buddhist jargon. There's clinging going on. This is tense. I mean, I'm just kind of playing at it while I'm talking, but it's still very uncomfortable. So then, to let go is just to relax like that. So I haven't even put it down, but I've just changed the manner of the grip, so that it's not as though we have to just get rid of things. Non-attachment doesn't mean to say doing without things, like getting rid of your wristwatch and your and your automobile and your house and your partner and your income and all of that. It might help, but but it's not necessary. I am a monk, so it's kind of, it's possible to screen that out, but it is kind of, it's out there, right? So it's not so much attachment, it's not picking things up, because, if you can pick something up and hold it and then put it down, that's a useful and very necessary part of life. So that the problems come when it's with the clinging and possessiveness. This is mine, you're not going to have it. This is the best goddamn bell striker in the whole world. And anyone who thinks different is in for a fight, or don't you like it?
Yeah.
They don't like it. What's wrong with my bell striker, Lee? What do you think about? You think I'm silly, don't you? We can do anything with it. We can create a whole sort of crises, dramas, all sorts out of it. Name your own particular obsession, that we get upset about, and so that it's not so much picking things up, but clinging to them. So just like we have a personality, we have a body, so we function through that. So it's not like Buddhist practice is saying, the Buddha's teaching and meditation is trying to make us into a non-person, like wiping out the personality, nullifying the body. It's like, no, you function through the personality, through the body. It's not like that is an obstruction. So we attach that, we look after it, we take care of it. It's like we pick it up, we use it. But then if we cling to it, or get possessive about it, then the trouble starts. So it's not so much not attaching, it's more like learning how to pick things up when we need to pick them up, and then putting them down when we need to put them down, which is all that sort of mindfulness of time and place is about. So, loving kindness, and a kind of theme that I was talking about for this evening, is that in a way, that attunement to the present moment, where we can kind of pick things up and use them, and to be able to discriminate. Okay, this is absolutely perfect the way it is. It doesn't have to be any different. It's absolutely fine what it is, and then we use it as we need. That we kind of if I want to strike the bell, I can strike it. If I want to give an example in a Dhamma talk, I can pick it up and use it. But if I kind of carry it around with me, saying this is absolutely perfect, just the way it is, and then I refuse to be parted from it, then the other people in the monastery are going to start thinking I'm pretty weird. Like Ajahn has been carrying this bell striker with him for a week now, and he just keeps saying it's perfect the way it is. It's kind of ridiculous. So we that's what I was saying in the beginning about have this basis of wholehearted acceptance. It is perfect the way it is, and so I pick it up when I need to use it, and I put it down when I don't need to use it. Just like there's nothing wrong with the road 101 going south. It's just we need to go north. So that that kind of discrimination on a basis of like attunement to the present is a very important principle, because sometimes we get afraid of discriminating. People talk about the non-discriminating mind, or non-dualism. It's very big in Buddhist circles. Non-duality is big stuff these days. So that makes dualism seem really kind of cheap and kind of unwanted. But a bit of duality is kind of useful. Like if I want to get back to the monastery, I'm kind of you got to choose, right? Go north, don't go south. If we get to the freeway and Larry says there is no north and south. In ultimate reality, there is neither north nor south, nor even here or there. He says, Larry, can we go home? This is not the time for non-dualism. Can we? So that kind of non-attachment is, and like that way working with that is like being able to pick things up at the right time, put them down at the right time, which in a more sort of crucial sense, it can also, or in terms of the more sort of pithy areas of relating to other people, it means when there's something to say, then we say it. If there's nothing to say, then we don't say anything. If we need to say something gentle and sweet, we say it. If we need to say something harsh, we'll say it. So that discrimination of how to act at any time is it needs to be based on that fundamental acceptance, but then we have to use that wisdom, attentiveness to the situation to see what's right. Like in that particular situation, the Buddha talked about several criteria that he used in order to decide what to say and when to people. So that he said, if something is true and pleasant to hear, but not beneficial, then he wouldn't say it. If it's true, beneficial, and pleasant to hear, then he'd know the right time to say it. If it's not true, he'd never say it. If it's not beneficial, he'd never say it. Right? If it's true and beneficial and unpleasant to hear, then again, he would know the right time to say that. So those are really useful criteria. I mean, obviously we fall short all the time. And I'm sure Leaf has got a whole... This is Anagarika Leaf, by the way. This is one of our novices. He's sure he's got a whole list of the occasions when I've fallen short just in the last week. I said, that wasn't very beneficial. That was completely idle chatter. But at least having that criteria in our consciousness is very helpful to know, when we're trying to decide what to say or how to communicate to be with others. Sometimes, what we need to do or to say is not welcome. People don't want to hear it, but when we see this is true, this is factual, and this is beneficial, okay, what's the right time to convey this? And following that through, there's actually another 5 criteria that the Buddha used or described to the monastic order of how to give negative feedback. Okay, this is where the notebooks come out, right? The 5 criteria for giving negative feedback is to speak with a heart of loving kindness, which means basically it's got to be for them, not for you. And so that means that sometimes we have to wait, because if I want to set you straight because you're mucking up my world, and if you were different, my world will be fine, right? You know that feeling? If you just behave differently, if you just straightened out this misconduct or this kind of foolish attitude of yours, then my world will be fine. There will be no wrinkles in it, right? So if that's the case, don't say anything. And on one instance that I've often mentioned, I actually waited for 2 years. I was in some kind of righteously indignant state. There was some senior monk of my order was doing things and acting in ways that I didn't like, and I thought were wrong, and everyone agreed with me. Of course, but no one was saying anything. But I could see that I wanted him to be different because he was a kind of blot in my world, and it was basically because I was irritated, and I wanted him to be different so that I wouldn't be irritated. And so I saw that was not the right motivation for it. So I literally waited for 2 years until I got to the place where I could sincerely feel, poor guy, he really doesn't see what he's doing. He just keeps colliding with people left, right, and center. He really doesn't see what he's doing. And then the motivation to speak to him was for his benefit. And whether I got anything out of it or I felt, my spleen was vented, was beside the point. It was really just for his benefit. So to speak with a heart of loving kindness is number 1. To ask permission to bring it up, first of all. Would it be all right, oftentimes in our kind of monastic code of conversation, it's like, could I mention something to you? Then you say, uh-oh, here it comes, what's this? So you ask permission to bring something up with somebody. You choose the right time and the place, so that I wouldn't turn to say to Leaf, don't you ever wash your jacket, Leaf? How could you bear to come out in public with such such grubby clothing? Of course, Leaf is absolutely spotless, so I can freely say that. It's an imaginary example, because when I was in white as a novice, I was so grubby. They used to tease me. They had to ordain me because I was turning brown anyway. I could never get the laundry thing down. So that would, if Leaf was a grubby anagarika, then in front of 60 or 70 people would not be the place to bring up his kind of shoddy laundry habits. That's the wrong time and place. So you choose a situation where you're not going to kind of embarrass people or make it difficult for them in public. You kind of choose a suitable situation, sometimes on neutral ground or some kind of informal, easy moment. So then, loving kindness, ask permission, right time and place. You stick to the facts. That's a real downer.
It's getting harder.
It's getting really harder. The last one's the real kicker. So you have to stick to the facts of what you know to be true. So rather than when you spoke to me yesterday, I was really upset about what you said, because you always have this attitude about me. It's like, no. When you spoke to me yesterday, I felt such and such, and I assumed, and I got the impression that your attitude was, right? Tell the difference. So you're not making any suppositions. You're not acting on hearsay. It's like what you've seen, what you know, and what the facts of the situation are. The last one, which I'll finish with for this evening, is you have to be free of the same fault yourself.
Bummer. Whoa, so much for any potential complaints.
So it kind of cuts down the
Shortens the list.
right. But just even if we fall short, just having those criteria in mind, you can see how, just having those criteria in mind can be incredibly helpful. Just because obviously we slip and we don't quite make it a lot of the time. But just having those criteria in consciousness and just being able to stay as close to that as we can, then we see. And the reason why it's not just because the Buddha was trying to put a sort of, out of a perverse sense of humor, trying to put a whole bunch of really difficult obstacles in our way that see whether we can climb over them or not. But more, it's like, if we can, the more fully we can establish our speech from that kind of basis, the more fully we'll be able to communicate. So what we say is not just a proclamation, it's a communication. Because communication takes a reception as well as a transmission, right? It's very easy to transmit and to have no receiver operating. So to communicate, we need to have a receiver and a transmitter, so that this is the way that we can really speak. And in that incident that I was describing, where I waited for a couple of years, what I found, to my amazement, was not only was because I wasn't coming from a place of harshness or negativity, but from kindness, that I was actually able to say far more extensive detail and far more depth of criticism than I even fantasized in my most extreme ranting internally. Because it's like, the guy was really open. It's like, oh really? Is that the way people perceive it? Oh, I don't mean that at all. Oh, that's terrible. I didn't realize that. And even if we're terribly polite, even if we're being very nice, but what we mean is, you're a dumb idiot, and I can't believe that you act the way that you do, and I'm going to be very dharmic and set you straight for your own benefit. Excuse me, there's something I'd like to share with you. Immediately the barriers come up. It's like, yeah, what? Huh? Well, not right now. We put the barriers up and we don't let anything in. So the more that we can really establish these qualities, then the more that we find there's an openness in the other, and that we can work out our difficulties. We can sort through our tense relationships and struggles, and we can also express our sort of political opinions and take positions on a social front and get stuff done in the world far more effectively than just by sheer sort of brute force and attacking, some being or some institution or some person that we've created as the other that should be set straight. Once we're both on the same side, then we can do stuff. Okay, so that's enough for this evening. So wisdom and compassion next week, but before then we have our great event, Mary and I. Sunday. So over,
Yes,
Mary.
on Sunday.